Thank you very much. And I thank you also for this kind invitation to this conference. It is really very important. And according to me, I learned very much during these 2 days because it's interesting to know what other people are doing also in different places of the world. And I greet all the participants, and in particular, Professor Rubio, Roberto Rubio, and Emilio Vicuña for this kind invitation. My paper, my presentation is divided in 3 parts. The first one is dedicated to Husserlian method and his phenomenological philosophy in order to introduce the question of God. The second deals with the Husserlian way to God from a philosophical point of view. And the third one, just a few remarks on phenomenology of religion as I try to elaborate it. So we go to the first part, and I say that I am very glad to deal once again with the problem of God in Husserl, because it is a very important topic in itself and in Husserl phenomenology. First of all, I think that it is necessary to say something about his own phenomenological analysis gained through his method in order to understand his approach to God. The novelty, as we know, I say something which is already known, but the novelty of Husserlian phenomenology resides in breaking all one's prejudice through the epoche. But what is most important is that through epoche, we put aside the thesis of the natural attitude, and we have already spoken about this point, the natural attitude. Not in the sense that there is a negation regarding Husserl of the world. On the contrary, to understand better what is the sense of the world and the sense of the I inside the world, and also the sense of God. This is done according to Husserl in an attempt to show that what exists originally. And I should like to quote from Husserl from Ideas 1. If I do that as I can with complete freedom, then I am not negating the world as though I were a sophist. I do not doubt its factual being as though I were a skeptic. Rather, I am exercising the phenomenological epoche, which also completely shuts me off from any judgment about the spatial temporal factual being. And epoche, as we know, permits us to conquer through the pathway of the two reductions, the eidetic one and the transcendental one. I quote, a new region of being never before delimited in its own peculiarity. This new territory can be understood through an image. I suggest to show Husserl's intention through a picture. This new territory can be understood through the image of a pane of glass that is inside us and on which we fix that which we are living inside in a continuous flow of inscriptions. I use the term glass pane to indicate that such a sphere exists, but it is not easily individuated. In fact, because of its transparency, it always eludes our searching, even if it is always present. On the surface of the glass pane, the finished products are given. That is, one finds, and this is the key point, Erlebnisse, the lived experiences already configured, and they are the way in which we live our experience. But they are the fruit also of a genetic process that must be studied through an ecological excavation. And we have some examples also in this conference regarding this excavation. We are aware of these lived experiences, and this justifies the term consciousness. But there are two levels of consciousness. One is the reflection, but the other one, I think, is the most important one, is that we are immediately conscious of the lived experience. And to employ a beautiful expression from Edith Stein, who was one of Husserl's closest students, as we know, self-consciousness presents itself, or the consciousness in general is better, presents itself as a light that accompanies the flow of the lived experiences and which illumines it in order to make it present. So we are aware of our lived experiences, and they are human acts, but on the glass pane, they appear in their essential structure. This is very important. As the lived experiences of the ego on diverse levels and various modalities, which can be examined in a structural and essential mood, as present in every concrete eye. So we have two levels: the structure of the eye, which lives in ourselves, and our concrete eye. Two aspects, very, very important. The glass pane, however, is a transcendental structure because it is the place that allows for the revelation of the sense from the viewpoint of understanding. It does not create anything. It registers, and this recording has a universal value. It happens in all human beings. And that is very important because through the analysis of our lived experiences, we can understand the world which surrounds us, we can understand ourselves, and we can understand God. Husserl's position regarding God differs from other positions, according to me, because it is by starting from the sphere of the lived experiences that we can reach God. Further, in delineating a modality of the transcendence of God, one begins to understand the function carried out by these lived experiences. In fact, on such a foundation, one sees that within lived experiences, certain aspects are established that correspond to the factual concatenation of the mental process, with distinct and regular orders, which presents us an ordered world. Husserl speaks of a style of experience which remain the same. The world is ordered. It is not determined by chance. We can say that the physical sciences, for example, also gives us evidence of the established order of the world. In other words, it is possible to delineate exact natural laws. This is proposed by Husserl because the world is a rational structure. Furthermore, this rationality is seen to have a scope. A concept emerges here that will be fundamental for the interpretation of many aspects of reality, including divine reality, namely teleology. One can find teleology in the natural world, the factual evolution of a series of organisms, including the human being. One also finds examples in the human world with its growth of culture and its spiritual treasure. We have the possibility to understand that we grasp regarding the world, what we grasp regarding the world is a teleology. It is not without a scope. There is an aim. In order to understand just what the ultimate sense of this development is, Husserl introduces God. So this is the first way, according to me, and I call it the objective way. Rationality in the sense of the scope. The meaning of the world's rational structure brings us before an existence that is extra-worldly, that is divine, a divine being. And I quote from Ideas 2 pertaining to a pure phenomenology, where we find this argument both in paragraph 58 and in 51. And paragraph 51 was yesterday described by Professor Gabarake. Our consciousness is absolute. No, I quote, I should like to quote, this being would obviously transcend, not merely the word, but absolute, this being, this divine being, but absolute consciousness. And it is very important that we find two times absolute. Consciousness is absolute and God is absolute. But it is totally different in the sense that the absolute regarding us is using a Latin expression, quod nos. God as absolute is in se. So we have just two levels of transcendence. God could be something transcendent in a sense totally different from that in which the world is transcendent also regarding us. We have, there is the transcendence of the world and the transcendence of the world, which is God. This way of reasoning is very close, I have found, to what Thomas Aquinas said regarding the way in which our mind can go as far as God. And this is the fifth proof, the so-called teleology proof of St. Thomas in Summa Theologiae. The second way to reach God is connected also to the medieval philosophy. This is my idea, naturally. Husserl never quoted Thomas in the sense of a teleology, and that leads to theology, and never quotes Anselm of Ostad, for example, in the sense of the subjective way. I think that in Husserl we find a subjective way which is very close to Anselm. Anselm, in his book Proslogion, says that he wants us to concentrate upon God. Husserl exhorts us to concentrate on our conscious lived experience. Anselm writes, enter into the chamber of your mind and shut out everything but God, and whatever helps us to seek him, and seek him behind closed door. End quotation. And Husserl writes in Ideas 1, there must be, therefore, within the absolute stream of a consciousness and its infinities, modes in which transcendences are made known other than constituting a physical reality as a unities of a harmonious appearance. These modes leads us not just as far as the world, but also as far as God. Because there is something transcendent within ourselves, and it is something with capital letter, and this something with capital letter is lived by ourselves. The proof that among the transcendences there is a transcendence of God is contained in what Husserl adds, I quote, and ultimately there would also have to be intuition and manifestation to which a theoretical thinking might conform, so that by following them rationally, it might have intelligible unitary rule of the supposed theological principle. I say that this is my interpretation regarding the relationship between Husserl and medieval philosophy. The third way is the intersubjective way, which Husserl explicitly links to one of the most interesting philosophers of the modern age, Leibniz. Both Husserl and Leibniz are interested in the human being as a monad. The monad, that means something which is individual, but according to Husserl, not in the sense that it is closed. And what is important in the human monad is the I. The I is the real part of the human monad. If a coordination of monads is possible, such a correlation can only be established by an I. But it requires another I. My I the I of the others, and another I with capital letter. And this I not only organizes and coordinates the world, but also creates the world. And we find some text on this problem in the Phenomenology of Intersubjectivity, book 2, and I quote, is there an I that experiences nature and the world, constituted in common with all finite I, with the eyes of these eyes, which has in itself all their thoughts, that acts within all as an I which creates nature and the world in the sense of the idea of good? This is a question, and Husserl said, yes, there is. And this great I, according to me, is taken from Fichte, this expression of the goddess I. The fourth way is quite original, in that it is the way through hieletics. And we know what is hieletics, but just to remember, what is the meaning of the word hyle? In this Greek word that means, we translate usually meta, but in this case it is not meta as something heavy. Rather, it is just the ground through which we can understand how we can know the reality. This is the genesis of our, we go as far as the profound levels of our being. The original hyle presents itself linked up with the original movements of our body, to which do correspond originary sentiments and originary instincts. The human being has a body that is she is embodied, has sensations and moves. Further, the human being has sentiments, feelings, instincts, that is a psyche. Then we have also spirit. There are 3 levels according to Husserl. The 2 aspects of body and psyche constitute the living body life. All this is originary material that we can find at the bottom of what we call the world, in the sense that this level is at the bottom. And we can call this level hieletic sphere. This sphere is not only passive and conscious, and the reflection on unconsciousness is very, very important, particularly in the Grenzprobleme, one of Husserl's volume. So it is not passive, unconscious, and instinctual, and instinctual unifying structure, but it also is so. But it also this level, hieletic level, possesses a teleology. This is very, very important. Teleology starts from the level of our lived experiences in our body. Teleology then has its origin in the facts of the hyle, which are originary in the widest sense. And I refer to a manuscript, the title is Teleology, which we can find in Phenomenology of Intersubjectivity, book 3, in which Husserl writes, teleology manifests itself at the transcendental level, but has its origin in the facts of the hyle that are originary in the widest sense. Without this, no world, no total transcendental subjectivity could be possible. And he raises a question. Think being what they are, can one say that this teleology, with its originary facticity, has its foundation in God? We come to the ultimate questions of fact, to the questions of originary fact, to the ultimate necessities, the originary necessity. Within this, Husserl says that it is possible to go as far as God, starting from the hieletic sphere. Or better, it is necessary to go to God to explain the teleology present in the dialectic sphere, insofar as this dialectic sphere seems to be chaotic, but on the contrary, is ordered. And so this is another possibility is the ethical way to God. There is another possibility, and we find it in Erste Philosophie, if we consider value propositions which divide into desiring and volitional propositions. Concepts of truth are delineated. Insofar as they are practical truths, they can be placed next to theoretical truth. Ethics must embrace sentiment, according to Husserl. Husserl goes beyond Kant in the sense that there can be joy that is born from the value of beauty, which is assessed concretely by being in front of qualitative contents, like ideas, in particular, the idea of a human being, individually considered. In this case, I become a pure sort of value. Here there is a sort of interior call. Professor Steinbock spoke about vocation. This is the proof of vocation towards an absolute beauty that arises on the basis of love. And I am speaking about Husserl, naturally. Love in this sense is a spiritual sentiment. And it means that I love the world, I love other people, which in turn means that I want that they receive what is the best for them. This is the ethical life. This call, this vocation, is delineated within the depth of each person and must be responded to by adopting a rational position. But the rational in this sense is, I know what is good. This is the meaning. I know what is good. The idea of a community of love is concomitant with the ethical idea of a rational humanity. But the rational in Husserl has a particular sense. This is what is evident, what is important in the sense that we can understand that it has a sense. And the humanity is aware, according to Husserl, of this own ethical task. In this sense, the world is not left to itself, to its destiny. One has a glimpse into it and sees it is a providential project, says Husserl. And he writes, there is no blind fate. God regulates the world. The world aspires to absolute paths, to values. God prepares in the heart of the human being the way to such paths. Humans could realize a divine world in the freedom that one finds in the world. And here, there is an openness toward religion. Husserl said human freedom needs divine support, namely grace. He speaks about grace. And I found also, but I am not sure, but perhaps I see a sixth way that is a mystical way. And this is very interesting because we have a text that was written by Husserl to Gerda Walter. Gerda Walter was another disciple of Husserl, and she is very important according to me because in 1923, wrote a book entitled Phenomenology of the Mystical. And this book naturally attracted Husserl's attention. And she sent to Husserl her book, and Husserl replied with a long letter that can be considered a short essay, which contains a very interesting conclusion. He spoke about the possibility of an excavation of the depth of the human interiority. He said that the subject possesses its own particular world with its own particular depth. Husserl shows that there is a possibility to descend into the deeper profundity of the human being and to ascend to the depth, from the profoundest profundities. A mystical experience, we know, is not just a religious experience, though it is also a religious experience. It is particular because it is a special contact with the presence of God himself inside the human being. So said the people who had this mystical, who also have this mystical experience. Because it is a very particular experience, it is not given to all people, but it is possible to have it if God wants to manifest himself through a personal revelation, as Edith Stein said. Mystical experience is a personal revelation. And Gerda Walter, in 1955, when she wrote an introduction to the new edition of her book, said that Husserl really spoke about ideal possibilities that we have such an experience, that the people have such an experience. According to him, it is possible to be open towards God, that God lives in us, and God can manifest himself in us in a very particular way, that is the mystical way. This is a possibility, and Husserl observes that possibility means that it could become real. I found, as I said, these 6 ways to God, and these ways comes from the philosophical argumentative approach. But in Husserl, we find also a religious experiential approach. And it is very, very important. I cannot say many things about this point, but we can say that in Husserl, we find the phenomenological analysis of what is inside us regarding the experience of God. We have seen grace, for example, and the presence of God in us. And so I try to describe the religious experiences starting from Husserl in this way. It does so moving from the trace of the divine. Rising up, we have a trace of divine. Rising up to the psychic process of attraction and repulsion. That is a sensory feeling. And then we move to spiritual dimension. So that is the religious experiences comes from inside, goes through psyche, and then to the spiritual, reaches the spiritual level. And this is very, very important, because we can say that we can accept or deny the religious experience. So we can understand also atheism in this sense. Because when I, at a psychic level, say, no, I don't want to accept what is inside me, I don't want to accept God. God is not fit for me. Then on spiritual life, I can elaborate, as some philosophers do, that there is no God. So we have acceptance and rejection of the divine. And this is an interesting, I cannot say more about this point, but it's very interesting. So in the sense that we understand why the religious experience, which is always present, can also deny. This is a part of the phenomenology of religion. The other part, I try to say that we have also to mind about the historical religions, historical expressions of religion in the humanities. Because we know that there are so many the religious or sacred, holy, we can say, sacred experiences which are not the same. And so how can we understand the different aspects of the expression of the religious experiences? And in this sense, I say that we have to mind, first of all, reflecting on religious experience within us, and we have to make a analysis, anthropological analysis of our lived experience, but we have to mind to the history of the religions and say why there is this difference. The difference stays in our lived experiences. The different religions, for example, the religion, the archaic religions are linked up with the High-Latic level. This is very, very interesting. The historical religions are more spiritual, we can say. So if we want to elaborate a philosophy of religion, we have to move from anthropology to history and vice versa. And in this way, one seeks here a characteristic element that is essential, invariable in its qualities and expressible, especially in the variety of the different modes. I think that the suggestion that we can take from Van der Leeuw is very, very important, because Van der Leeuw, the phenomenology of religion, described that in us, but not so, not in the same way as Husserl or Wittgenstein, for example, did. That in us there is the presence of a power, he says, the presence of a power. And we are compelled to search a divine power. One may keep trying to find this power. When one does find it, one is able to grasp and describe the very form of this divine power. So there are different expressions of religion. We could call the foregoing a historical philosophical description of religious experience a new kind of phenomenology of religion, which bestows sense to the argument concerning the presence of a particular experience that we try usually to label otherwise. And Professor Camilleri told us that we don't want to say that it is religion, but we try to say that there is something else. And it is not so. Nevertheless, this experience always emerges again, the experience of the sacred, the divine, and in a new way with its unique characteristics. The experience of a power that compels us, completely fills us. To borrow from what Van der Leeuw says is a religious experience. And he says the meaning of a lived experiences of religion refers to a togetherness, to a whole. I can only be grasped from the perspective of eternity. Power is linked up not with time, but with eternity. Here we have we are treating a particular form of encounter between a human subject and the divine object, but not in exhaustive manner. This encounter is felt to be a revelation. And we have two kinds of revelation: the natural revelation, God inside us, and the revelation in the historical sense of the revelation, Jesus Christ, for example, the traditional, what we find in the Bible. And because we can we understand this revelation? Because the human being is capax Dei, knows the experience that comes from another with capital letter. And this is the ground of the revelation, be it natural or supernatural. It is the modality of the revelation that is extraordinary. It is hidden, inaccessible, yet shown. And in this paradox, we found the profound essence of our religious experience of a revelation in the sense of natural and supernatural revelation that allows us to maintain the veritable presence, absence of the divine in us. Thank you.